So let's actually dive in. And I'm just going to head over to my demo environment. Like I said, we have 7 products that we're going to cover today. We're going to get started with ACL Easy. And just a little bit of intro in case there's anyone here who's never used the Ytria tools. Important thing to understand about our solutions is that everything we do, we code our tools in C++. So these are not Nodes databases. We don't work with Lotus script. We have our own executable files that are detached to your computer when you install the products. And so this comes with a lot of advantages. For example, when you launch one of our tools, essentially you're creating a new Node session that we authenticate with your ID file, which basically makes our tools completely independent from your Nodes client. So whenever you're processing a lot of documents in ScanEasy or reading out thousands of ACLs in ACL Easy or dealing with a lot of agents, it's going to take a little bit of time. But the good news is that your Nodes client is not frozen at the same time, right? Because we're completely independent from the Nodes client. Another thing that's pretty awesome about the tools is that because we have our own Nodes sessions, these sessions are authenticated by an ID file that you're using in your Nodes client. But at any point, you can decide to choose another ID file. And so you can have your Nodes client open with your user ID, and then you can always switch to another ID file from within the products directly, okay? So that's a really cool way to look at your Domino servers using even different ID files. And of course, full access administration is also supported. Now, generally, we have 3 types of tools, and we're actually going to see all 3 types today. The Easy Suite Admin consists of 7 different products. One of the types that we're going to look at here is tools that work with one server at a time. With these tools, we're going to focus on things that you usually do database by database. I'm talking about administering the ACL, right? So dealing with access control lists, dealing with their agents, which pretty much goes deeper than just a database by database because you go down to the actual design element level, or even database properties and settings. So these are going to be products that we offer that work with one server at a time. So essentially, we take the level of administration that you're used to a much higher level. We actually have tools that are multi-server. So we're going to see Replication Easy and Console Easy, where we aggregate what happens on multiple servers. And this is going to be super helpful, for example, when it comes to replication, because with Replication Easy, you can oversee all of your servers, all of your replicas across those servers. And this is way more than what we have access to in the administrator client. So essentially, every one of these tools focuses on different areas in administration. But one of the things that connects them all is that we kind of felt like we need a better overview. We need more powerful tools to manage those aspects, whether that be agent management or ACLs or even your documents in Nodes databases. So having said that, like I said, we have 7 tools and not a lot of time. So let's actually dive in. Now I'm going to first pull up ACL Easy. Basically, this is our access control list and security management product. So pretty much anything that has to do with ACLs. As you'll see, the first thing you choose is the server that you want to work with. And so what happens next is we load every database from that server along with the folders and pretty much everything. Now, before I put in the check mark next to the server, which essentially will load every ACL from every database, this might actually be something new because I know a lot of our users don't really use it, is that we have some filters here, like pre-selection filters. We could say that we just want to include databases. And you can see that this way, we automatically select everything that has an NSF extension, but not the NTFs. Yeah? Same way I could do an ACL entry selection filter. This is very handy with larger servers where you don't want to load tens of thousands of databases. If you just want to work with one specific ACL, you simply put in the ACL name, but you could also filter by the ACL level or the type. Yeah? So this all works with before we actually make our selection. Right now, I'm going to work with everything. So I just put the check mark next to the server, which essentially goes through every database on the server, and it's going to gather the ACL properties and display them in what we call the Flexi Grid. Now, the Flexi Grid is a really powerful data analytics interface that we use across all of our tools. It essentially looks a bit like an Excel sheet. We have one column per ACL entry property, and everything that we show in this grid stands for an access control list entry. So you can see the entry name right here. You see the type, you see the access level, you see the database title and file name, etc., where this ACL belongs to. And then we've got all the different flags that come with that ACL as well. Now, the really big added value here is that you get to analyze this information. I've got every single ACL from my entire server loaded up in one interface. What can I do with it? Well, for example, you can use this drag and drop functionality to simply categorize all your ACLs according to their names. Now, this is going to work a lot like Domino. So it's going to look like a categorized notes view, and it behaves like one too. So I can use Shift minus to collapse everything and Shift plus to open it up again. This essentially gives me a list of unique ACL names across my entire server, and you can see how many databases have those names, have those ACL entries. Now, the really cool stuff here is that we can use as many layers of groupings as we want. So I can grab the access level and use it for a second level grouping. And this allows me to look at stuff like the default ACL entry, right? You can see that we've got a total of 234 databases loaded. Now, when I open this up, it right away categorizes those ACL entries according to their access level. And that allows me to find every ACL entry with manager access, which of course is not good, right? So when I open that up, this is 46 databases where the default is set to manager. I can go ahead and actually make changes directly from here. So that's one of the beauties of ACL Easy, and actually all of our tools, is that not only do we give you a better understanding of what's going on in your servers, but we also let you fix any issues that you find during the process. So what did we find here? We found 46 ACL entries, 46 databases where the default is set to manager. Now, what we can do with that is simply navigate to attributes down here. And this is the input panel where I get to modify the access level right away. Now, of course, when it comes to changing ACL properties, it's not just the level that I can change, but in this case, I only want to change the level. I don't want to change the type or anything else. So the only thing that I touch is the only property that's going to be changed. The moment I hit apply, we go through those ACLs, 46 databases, and we modify the default ACL entry access level. Now, an important thing to consider here is that we know that with great power comes great responsibility, right? So when you can make changes with one button, we don't want you to make mistakes. And one of the questions we always get is, how do I, do we have an undo button, right? So the thing is that it's even better than that. You will actually have access to the status column, which will show me anything that I have modified before those modifications are actually final. So what I just did was not yet sent to the server. I can actually categorize my grid based on the status, which will show me the 46 ACLs that are supposed to be edited, but these are only stored in memory. To make them final, I'd have to go to server and then say apply changes. That will actually send all of my changes to the server, or I could select some of them specifically, and then from the right-click menu, I can apply the changes on those selected databases or reload the databases and cancel any modifications. So that's kind of how you can roll back from the changes that you did, as well as we have this safety security check for verifying that what you're doing is really what you want to do. Right, so we saw how to change a bunch of ACLs all at once. Now there's another thing that I always check at customer sites, which is of course the anonymous ACL entry, right? So we want to make sure that that those databases are logged down from the web, in case we're talking about a web server. So I can quickly use the type ahead search to locate anonymous. And I can do a next level of grouping using the access level. And we'll see that this gives me a really good snapshot of my anonymous ACL entries. Funny story, I was just at a customer a couple months back, and we did a security audit with them on site. And one of the things we found was 10 ACL entries called not anonymous, but anonymous, right? So somebody made a typo and they're pretty funny at that too. And that, of course, won't work against outside actors. So that's also a good idea to look at. Now, one of the things that I notice here is that there's 174 anonymous ACL entries. But the total amount of databases that I loaded was 234, which would indicate that there is about 60 databases where the anonymous ACL entry doesn't exist. Now, the problem with that is that even if you don't have an anonymous ACL entry, anonymous people can still access the application, but it will be the default ACL entry that's responsible for determining the access level. So it means that, generally speaking, it's not a good idea to have databases without the anonymous ACL entry. So what can we do there? We can basically take one of the anonymous ACL entries that actually has no access, and we can say right-click it, and then we want to copy the selected ACL entries to one or multiple databases. Now, before we select our destination databases, we actually give you a bit of a status info here. So you see where this ACL entry is already present and where it isn't. You can group by that info, and you'll see that indeed it's 60 databases that are missing the anonymous. I will just select those, and then using my space bar, I'll put the check marks in there, hit OK, and we're basically copying this ACL entry along with all of its properties and settings to the 60 databases that were missing it earlier, right? There is actually a question, which is awesome. There is a question, does the ACL log get updated on all of the databases? So I imagine that this is about your modifications. So when we actually save our modifications, do we update the ACL log? The answer to that, and that's a great question, is yes. As a matter of fact, whenever you use the Ytria tools to make any modifications, because we use the C API, we will kind of do the same thing as if you modified an ACL entry in the Notes client. We're just way more powerful when it comes to multiple modifications. So the answer is yes, it will show in the ACL log as well. And we'll talk about ACL logs in a second because we show them a little bit better than what you normally have in the Notes client as well. So we just deployed the anonymous ACL entry to all of the databases that were missing it. Now, of course, there's a couple of them that have higher access than normal. So I can select those, and I can, again, use the attributes panel to downgrade them to no access, for example. So the essential thing to know about ACLs is that we do everything and anything that you would ever need to do on ACLs, but we support operations across multiple databases and as many ACLs as you want. So we've seen how to modify a bunch of ACLs. We've seen how to deploy new ACLs to multiple databases. There is one more thing that you might have seen here in the main grid, which is all these red colors, right? So we saw a bunch of red colors earlier, which actually is a result of a background calculation that we do. Essentially, that's one of the things that we see at many customer sites, is that the admin P doesn't always work as it's supposed to. And so you sometimes end up with a lot of ACLs that belong to people who are no longer there, that belong to servers that were long decommissioned, etc. So you're not really supposed to have these ACLs anymore. What we do with them is we automatically recognize them as an invalid ACL entry. We give you the red background color, but we also give you the isNamingNAB functionality, which essentially is a column that I can use to categorize my ACLs. And this will show me that I've got 618 invalid ACL entries. Now I can, of course, categorize these a bit further. So I can look at them by type. I can look at them by name. I'll see that there's a significant amount of groups that have been deleted from here. And I can look at the people that actually have those invalid names to make sure that they're correct. And then once I made sure that this is all correct, I can simply select those people, or those ACLs, right? And then I can simply, from the right-click menu, remove them from databases right at once. So essentially, cleaning up your ACLs across an entire server has never been easier than that. Besides that, we have a number of other functionalities. So we can do search and replace across ACL entries. If you ever need to find a name and then, let's say you renamed someone, but the rename request didn't actually go through and didn't modify the ACLs. So you can do a search and replace across as many databases as you want. You can rename multiple ACL entries at once. You can create new ones. You can export the entire ACL along with flags and all of the roles to a file. And one of the really awesome things here is that we can actually work with group memberships as well. So should we find a group ACL entry like Acme Administrators, we give you a little button right next to the group. And when you click that button, we'll right away show you who are the members of that group. Should this group contain other groups inside, we'll also let you enable the group navigator and go as deep as it gets to quickly understand who are the people that are members of this group. We actually have under the options menu, the group expander functionality, which essentially allows you to expand every single group, even nested groups, and get a really good understanding of who has access to what. Now, we actually go one step further and even allow the calculation of effective access rights directly from here. Now, this is a functionality that works on one database at a time in Notes. We just simply extended it to as many DBs as you want, and basically showing the effective access for as many databases as you want it has never been easier. You simply select one or multiple users. You can select anonymous. You can select a server. Pretty much, you can even select every single server. And when you hit OK, we're going through all of the databases on this server and evaluating the effective access rights of the 3 people that I selected. Actually, that's 1 server and 2 actual users. You'll see that this is extremely fast. So we did over 600 calculations in just a few seconds. And then you get the effective access report that will allow you to look at the selected names. So these are the names that I wanted to evaluate. You can look at the effective access, and then you can actually understand why those names have that effective access, because we even explained the effective membership, which in this case means that the anonymous has manager on this particular database because there's no anonymous. And so it's the default entry that's granting manager access. Okay. Same goes for people. You'll see that they might be member of groups, or they might have that access right because the default allows them to be designers, etc. So this is really, really powerful stuff. Now, we also have another interface here, which is Global ACL Properties. And the Global ACL Properties will be able to manage ACL-related settings per database. So every entry in this interface is one database. You can see, for example, and this is just coming back to the question that we had, you can quickly access the ACL history for one database, as well as you can quickly access the ACL history for all of the databases on the server. You can see how fast this is. We just loaded up the ACL history of 234 databases. And if I was to want to find out who made what changes here, right? I could actually say, show me everything that was done by John Admin. I hit OK, and so I just filtered it out. I can see these are the databases where the ACL has been modified by that person. Now, another important thing here is that everything you see in our FlexiGrid can be exported just as easily as a Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V. All right. So I can put this into my Excel sheet with just a Ctrl-V, and there is a host of other ways to export information as well. So we have the right-click menus, grid tools and options, and then you've got an actual export dialog where you can select a bunch of other formats. So no matter what the information that you're looking at in the FlexiGrid can always be exported in just a jiffy. All right, so another thing, actually, this is also something I always check at customer sites, because that's the reason that the admin P doesn't always work, is the administration server setting, right? So you can categorize by the admin server, and you can see that there's 40 databases that do not have an admin server set, which of course is an issue. If I was to want to correct that, I can quickly edit the advanced ACL properties, select the server, the action level, etc., and then simply edit multiple databases all at once. And there's one more thing that's important, is the NAB group navigator. In here, what we do is we essentially offer to resolve and understand our group structure, everything that's in our names and address book, not just ACL groups, but pretty much everything. If I enable the group navigator, we'll actually resolve groups within groups as well. And we give you a status message about your groups. For example, right away, you'll see empty groups here. You will see incompatible subgroups where, for example, an ACL only group contains a distribution list, or groups that are actually marked in red mean that there is at least someone in there who's not part of the names and address book. So we kind of do the same background check on group members that we do with ACL entries. We'll find any group members that are no longer part of the company. And so you can even deal with them in the grid layout, where we show you the same info, but in our FlexiGrid. And so what this means is you will see that the name column represents the group. The members column shows you the actual members. So I can quickly categorize based on the members, for example, to find out who belongs to what group, right? This is a list of all of my users, and I can quickly find out which groups they belong to. In fact, I can remove them from all of those groups right away. We also give you the red colors as well as the is in NAB column, which I can use for a categorization, and then simply look at my invalid group members with a shift minus. So I've got 103 invalid group members. And if I made sure that they're correct, I can simply remove them using the right-click menu's remove members from groups functionality. So that is our nav group navigator. Let me take a look at the Q&A section. So there is a question, this is a good one. Is it possible to access all ACLs from multiple servers at once? The answer is yes and no. ACL Easy works with one server at a time. You can always open multiple instances of ACL Easy, but the real answer here is that we actually have created an API for all of our solutions, which means that using our XML automation API, you can actually write scripts to instruct ACL Easy to do a certain job across multiple servers. So whether you want to just create a report of all of your ACLs from multiple servers, or you can even calculate the effective access rights of a number of people across multiple servers, this is possible using our automation API. You can actually use the automation recorder, which works a bit like Excel macros that will record a set of steps. And then you can use Replication Easy to select the servers on which you want to run a job in ACL Easy. All right. We actually have this on our website. So if you go to ytria.com/automation, you will see that we have a number of example scripts, including some for ACL Easy. So yes, definitely this is possible, but it works with automation XML scripts. All right, I'm way out of time. So let's actually move on to something else. Let's take a look at Database Easy. Database Easy is our solution for dealing with everything that has to do with DB administration, generic database administration. It actually started out as a tool from frustration, because the thing is there is no interface where you would see all of your database properties in one place in Notes, right? You can go to your admin client and look at the files view, but you only get 23 properties, while there is actually over 130 of them, which we all show you and all manage in Database Easy. So the first thing is it works the same way as ACL Easy, is that you open your server, you select the databases you want to work with. There is actually a two-step data loading process. So you have to say load complete database information, which is when we fill in the blanks. So there's a two-step data loading process as opposed to ACL Easy where there's just the one. And after this, we show you every single database property. Now, I want to introduce the idea of the grid manager, because the thing is, grid manager is always the leftmost button, or Control J. This is where you decide what you want to show in the grid and a lot more than that. So you have every single column that is available in the main grid, and you can quickly make them visible or hide them. You can actually say, I want to make sure that everything is selected, which works with the Control Space. So now you can see that my grid is gigantic. We have over 130 properties displayed in here. And of course, this allows us to really look at a lot of angles, look at our databases from a lot of different angles. For example, I could quickly look at the ODSs. I'm not very proud of what you're about to see, but I've seen a lot of customer environments like this as well. So there's a lot of old ODSs. With Control-Shift-G, and this is something good to remember, you can remove all of your groupings. That's Control-Shift-G. We actually manage properties that are not that easy to get in Notes. For example, the space used percentage. Now, this is something you calculate database per database, which is why even the admin client is going to give you non-applicable, or NA, in a lot of cases. In Database Easy, you have a unique feature to load the current space used percentage for databases, which allows you to really quickly find databases that are using a lower percentage of their allocated disk space. And of course, what do I want to do with these databases? I want to compact them, right? Or I want to use the DBMT on them. It is actually possible to do that directly from here. Simply right-click the databases, and then you can go to console commands. And this is actually dynamic. So whatever you have selected, we're going to allow you to do the compact, updol, fix up, etc. Or you can even compose your custom commands. Now, if you select a larger amount of databases here, then you might want to stay away from the console commands interface. And when you hit OK here, we're going to give you a big fat warning is that if I was to launch compact on these 61 databases, we would essentially launch 61 threads of the compact server task, which is not something good from a performance standpoint, right? So instead of that, we offer the choice to export these databases into a Domino indirect file, which essentially is just a text file containing the path information to those DBs, and you will be able to target that file with one thread of the compact task and have all those databases processed by the same console command thread. All right. A lot of other stuff that you can do here. We can actually, this is one of my favorite features. I didn't show this. If I was to do the compact or any other tasks, you have this little helper button that shows you an inline help for any switches that are available. This saves me so much time because I definitely spend more time Googling for switches than I'm proud to admit. And this is available for every one of those console commands. We can actually do a lot more stuff. We can clear the database replication history. We can generate new replica IDs for the selected databases. We can export them to IND files. We can actually analyze the user activity, manage encryption. So you can set your encryption, you can remove encryption, etc. We can actually get the view and folder index sizes for selected databases. So this is the equivalent of the show database command on the server console, which gives you a list of all of the database views and all their sizes. But we also give you the index related properties, such as the discard and refresh settings, all in one place. So this is what you get. You can quickly find your largest view indices. There we go. You can see it's a small demo environment. You can actually purge view indexes directly from here if you ever need to find some space quickly on those servers, etc. For the user activity, we actually use the database recorded user activity, which is pretty cool. So let me show you guys one example here. We actually deal with a lot of extra properties, things that we need to calculate. For example, we show you the number of documents, designs, different classes of designs for databases. We also show you the mail owner information for any databases where there is a mail owner. Now, one of the things you'll notice is that we have those familiar looking red colors here as well. So for any mail files where we find a calendar profile owner field, we're going to run the background check on them to see if that person is still there. What this means is that if I categorize my grid based on the is mail owner in NAB, this will give me all of the mail files, actually 19 mail files that belong to people who are no longer there, right? So we're talking about orphan mail files. Now, I've done this with a customer at one time, and I was pretty proud because, when I do this on site, my job is to find problems, not to actually solve them. So it's kind of the best job in the world, right? So I found this and I was showing to them that I found over 100 of these orphan mail files, and they said, okay, just slow down, right? We do that on purpose. We don't want to lose any information, but could you actually look at those mail files and tell us whether they were used by a real person other than administrators and servers within the last 3 months? So that's something we can do directly from Database Easy. I can quickly right-click those databases and then say, let's load the user activity analyzer. And let's actually set a date time range and say, I want to see everything that happened since May 30th. And I'm going to hit OK. And now we're going through the 19 databases. We're gathering the user activity from those DBs. And one of the things about user activity is that the server doesn't really differentiate between who's using the database, right? So if the server itself is opening up the database for whatever maintenance reason, there is going to be an activity entry in there. So it's not enough to look at whether the database was used in the last 3 months. You also need to look at who it was. So first, let's categorize by the database title. These are the databases that I looked at. And then let's actually use the little filter icon on the user column, because here I can use a value filter. And you'll see that barely anybody uses this stuff. I don't want to see any servers. I don't want to see any of my administrators. So basically, I'm just left with one user. And you can see that out of the selected 19 mail files, only 2 of them were used by an actual user. This somewhat correlates with what I found at the customer, which was that out of 110 databases, only 5 of them were used by a real person in the past 3 months. So we ended up archiving those DBs and really saving a lot of space on the server, because these were like 10, 15 gigs mail files, right? So that's just something a little bit more complex to show the power of Database Easy. And so one of the main functionalities that I forgot to mention is, of course, that we show you every single database property, right? And we actually let you edit every one of them. In fact, we let you edit them for as many databases as you want. So I can select a number of databases and then edit their basic, design, advanced properties, even quota management or template build properties, which is pretty unique because you don't have access to normally modify this, but it's a really good way to manage versioning and stuff like that for databases. So that's how we work with our applications in Database Easy. And there's one more thing that's kind of a bonus. It's one of my personal favorite features, is the ability to actually copy multiple databases as database links. What this means is we all know how those application links work, right? They're kind of annoying. You send them to someone and you have no idea what's going to happen when you open the DB. So instead of that, we allow you to actually copy multiple databases as links, and our links are going to look a little different. We're actually going to include the database title, the server information, as well as the path information. Okay, so that's the copy databases as links functionality. So this is Database Easy. I'm going to quickly check on questions, but from what I'm seeing, there is not, there's no questions. So let's actually move on. Good. So let's take a look at the third product here that is going to be the same scope as in working with one server. This is actually called Agent Easy. This is one of my favorite tools from a value proposition perspective, because there's just no equivalent. We actually built this tool because of a mistake that one of us made here at Ytria, which was an agent that ended up crashing one of our servers every Sunday at 2 a.m. Yeah? So what essentially happened is you come to work on a Monday and then you see that the server was restarted due to a crash. And now you need to figure out what was it that caused the crash, right? But the thing is that you don't have any control over your scheduled agents, because the only thing you can do is do a tell agent manager sketch, right? Which gives you the list of agents that are scheduled to run today and after the point in time of when I enter the command. So instead of that, we can use Agent Easy on one server at a time. We actually offer looking at scheduled agents as well as all kinds of agents, but the default is scheduled agents because they are usually the most interesting. And so what you get is pretty simple. We give you every one of your scheduled agents on a server along with all of their properties and settings. If you want to look at more properties, you can open up the grid manager, select everything in the visible column, and use a control space to select everything. These are all of my scheduled agents along with all of their properties. Now, this allows us to do a lot of different sorts of analysis. For example, one of the common questions that we may have is, how do I know what agents are running on my server, right? When are they supposed to run on my server? So with that, we can actually look at the schedule type. We can look at the agent schedule. And when we group it all together, this provides a really clear overview of how my agents are set up. So I've got 157 daily agents. Out of them, 126 are supposed to run at 1 a.m. This is not good, right? Well, one of the things I didn't look at is I didn't look at whether these are enabled or not. So if I simply categorize by the enabled status, you'll see that it's only 60 agents that are enabled. 41 of those are running daily, and 29 are still kicking off at 1 a.m. Why is this awesome? Because otherwise, you have zero visibility of how your agents are set up. And for those of you who work with developers or work as developers as well, we all know how this works, right? You move an application to production, and then in the better cases, you document what you're doing, but basically we just decide when that agent is supposed to run off the top of our head. We have no idea about when we may or may not have timeframes on the server that aren't that busy. Here, you get the visibility, you get the idea of what's running and when, and you can make educated decisions based on that info. You can select all of those agents that you want to modify. And as with all the other tools, you can actually modify multiple agents across multiple databases and all of their properties. So I can quickly change their runtime properties and make them run at 135 instead. And now it's going to look a little more balanced. So basically, being able to see what's running and when, and being able to make decisions on that is something that's really unique to Agent Easy. Another thing that's of course very important is, how do we know whether the agents that are supposed to run are actually running on our servers, right? We actually manage history information as well. So you can actually look at when was the last time that this agent has run. We can simply sort our agents by that information, and we can look at how long it took for those agents to run. I can actually sort by that info, and this is pretty unique. You don't normally have access to this. You can see that I have a large number of agents that ran for precisely 10 minutes, which also just so happens that it's the longest time that my agents ran on the server. So does that kind of smell fishy here? Because the thing is that there is a chance that these agents were actually cut off by the MGR, right? How would I prove this suspicion? I would need to go into the agent log, right? Now, good news, you can actually access the agent log directly from here. And you can see at the end that indeed there's an error because the agent execution time limit was exceeded. In fact, we can access the agent log for as many agents as we want by simply selecting them and then using the Show Agent Log submenu from our right-click menu. Then I can categorize them by database title, and you see all the log entries. In fact, I can use a text filter on the log entry to say, show me any errors that may have occurred, and voila, these are our agents that were cut off by the NGR. Okay? So that's the agent log information. Now, when we find agents that weren't properly running, it can actually work with the status info, because I want to look at my enabled agents. Theoretically, enabled scheduled agents should be running on my server property. I can then look at the last run start date, but you'll see that because the last run start date is actually a date and time value, this whole grouping doesn't make a lot of sense. However, when you click the little filter icon, you actually have some other options, such as the group formatting. So we can decide what is the format that I want to use for when I group by this information. In this case, I can show that I only want to show the year and no time. When I hit OK, you'll see that here, this becomes much more interesting, because it will show me all of my scheduled agents that are enabled. That is 60. You can see that 38 of those ran in 2018, but the rest of them, these will all need attention, because they're supposed to run, but they're not. Now, one of the most common reasons that we see is that, of course, they were signed by someone who's no longer there. In fact, we show you the signature information here as well, and you will see the red color also indicates that those people are no longer with the company. In fact, it's a really cool exercise to just group your agents by their signers and quickly get a list of signatures across your entire server. Now you can, of course, select a bunch of these guys and re-sign after them. So I can select a bunch of agents and say, let's pass them on to Sign Easy and sign them with our ID, or we can even use Sign Easy to have them sign with another ID. We'll talk about this in a second. So that's how we deal with signatures. Now, because we talked about the history, there is also a visual representation of how our agents are running. There's the agent timeline, which shows me when those agents ran. You can hover over them and then get the info about the agent. You can actually select the date range. You can look at the last 24 hours, for example, and then use our zoom in tool to quickly zoom into that and see how long those agents were running, which will be much more interesting in a real environment, right? If you actually click the agent, it will jump to the agent in the main grid. And needless to say that just like everything in the Flexi grid, even the agent timeline can be exported for reporting purposes. And it's going to look quite fancy. We even have a watermark. So created by Ytria Agent Easy. All right. So as we said, Agent Easy shows you every single agent property. It allows you to modify anything and everything about your agents, and it allows you to run agents on the server directly. This is one of my favorite lazy features. I'm a very lazy admin and developer. So instead of having to remember the agent name and the application, etc., we compose that console command for you directly. And when you hit OK, we're going to pass it onto the server, provided, of course, that you have console rights on the server. Otherwise, this won't work. All right, and so let's actually talk about signatures. Now, one of the things that's important is that Agent Easy, just like the rest of our tools, when you make modifications, they're not directly sent to the server. So you see that I modified 6 agents. These are waiting to be signed and saved. Now, sometimes you don't want to use your own signature because we're using an ID file here. I could actually say sign and save selected, in which case the agents are going to be signed with my ID file. However, if I don't want to do that, I can pass them on to another tool called Sign Easy, which is something we're going to take a look at right now. But there is a question, so I'm gonna take a look at this. Right. So there's a question about Database Easy, and if there is a possibility to solve the UNK table problem. Okay. So drop all user. Delete the index, and yeah, so we don't have a one-button solution for the UNK table limitation per se, but if what you're usually doing is to delete the index and then use the compact C, this is definitely possible from within Database Easy, because we can actually deal with the view indexes. We've seen how to gather the view indexes in Database Easy. You can actually purge them directly, and then you can use the compact C from directly the Database Easy interface, as well as then you can use an updol to actually get those indexes built up once again. So every one of those troubleshooting steps or every one of those problem fixing steps are available from within Database Easy. And I would say that it's much more comfortable to do it directly from there. All right. Good, good, good. So let's take a look at Sign Easy. This is going to be a bit faster, but Sign Easy is a really, really powerful product. Essentially what it's about is signatures in a database. It will look pretty basic because this is a tool that works on one database at a time, okay? However, it comes with really powerful batch capabilities. So the first things first, I opened it on a database, and what we give you is a list of designs, okay? You can select which designs you want to process. Then on the settings tab, you can decide what you want to do. Essentially, you can do a signature on those selected designs, or you can do an audit just to find out the current information, current signature status. And then the third tab is the most interesting one, which is where you decide what ID file you want to use for that signature. Now, the third option is basic, right? This is the default option, is that I will just use my current ID file. This is really no biggie. The second option, however, is much more interesting. This is an option that I was madly in love with before my Ytria time, because I used to work with 5, 6 different customers in various capacities. So I would have about 5 or 6 different ID files per customer. And you can imagine how, I mean, you guys know how painful it is to switch between ID files back and forth, right? So here you can quickly select an ID file from your local machine. And when I do the audit, we're going to perform the audit based on the template development. Actually, with the template development ID file, I'll have to input the password, and we just switch to that ID file without switching our nodes client authentication. All right. So we're performing the audit. We're going to get a pretty nice report. Oh, interesting. Okay. Based on who are the current signers. And you will see that we do the same background check on those signatures as well. So we'll see that this was actually kind of a dumb choice to select. Not even that much. So we know, for example, the agent signer is not something I want to use anymore. So I could actually select the agent signers here and re-sign them really quickly. Now, the most important thing about Sign Easy is that we can actually use stored ID files. Now, what that means is Sign Easy comes with a backend notes database, okay? You can, by default, this is going to be your local Ytria installation database, but you can and you should put that database in one of your servers and have your entire team connect to that central SignEasy database. So mine is actually connected to a central database on one of my servers. And why this is awesome is because as an administrator, I can actually store ID files directly in that SignEasy database. So what I do is I'm uploading a new ID file. I'll put in the password that we encrypt very, very heavily. And as the uploader and thereby the owner of that ID file, I can authorize individual or groups of users. So I just put in my development group name, who will be the only ones that are allowed to use this ID file for signatures only. And then I can put in where they're allowed to use this signer ID or put in an exception list. Here we actually accept wildcards, so we accept direct databases or folders or even servers using the star for a wildcard. And then I can actually set up a log file that specifically listens to everything that happens with this particular ID file. Why is this really cool? Is because as a developer, if I've been shared, if an ID file has been shared with me, I can actually select an ID file that I don't even know the password to and perform a signature using that particular ID file. In this case, it's going to be my template development ID file. I'm going to hit sign. And so as you can see, we don't even ask for the password because we're doing everything in the background. I have been allowed to use that ID file, so I'm using it for signatures. And at the same time, according to the signer ID settings, we will document everything that happens in the Ytria SignEasy database. So the cool thing is this is a fully secure system where you can have developers, use ID files that you don't normally want to trust them with. Okay, like you don't want to give them the passwords, because the thing is that when you share ID files that are really powerful, the moment somebody switches to that ID file, you don't know who's doing what anymore, right? So it's not very secure. We see that we have performed the signature on all of these elements. We see the previous signers here. And then at the same time, if I go back to the Ytria SignEasy database, let's just see where I have put this database on the server. I just had to kill my workspace, so I'm kind of trying to find some stuff here. So we've got a specific log file for the template development ID file, and you'll see if everything is correct in the logs view. This is exactly what we just did. So you can see that it was John Admin who used the template development ID file, and I can pull it up in SignEasy to see what were the design elements that were signed. So this is a fully secure system that allows you to share and better manage signatures and signer IDs. And like I said, this is very deeply embedded in Agent Easy as well. So at this point, I could pass this selected number of agents onto SignEasy, in which case I would first do my changes. So we would save the agent first, but then would pass the selection of agents onto SignEasy, simply select the database that you want to, the signer you want to use, and then hit OK to basically batch sign those agents. So that's how we manage this bridge between agents and signatures. SignEasy can actually do a lot more than just one database at a time. We have something called the server batch database that allows you to define a job that you want to repeat across multiple databases, which in turn allows you to do stuff like show me every signature that belongs to people who are no longer with the company, right? Show me invalid signatures across multiple servers. And you can even perform batch signatures and say, I want to re-sign everything that was previously signed by this person across multiple databases or even multiple servers. So those are our batch capabilities. All right, good. So that was Agent Easy and SignEasy. So we're done with our first 4 products. Now let's go and take a look at something that's more wide. And so we're going to take a look at our multi-server tools. Let's actually get started with ConsoleEasy. ConsoleEasy is a product that does a lot more than it seems at first. This is a tool that allows us to look at multiple server consoles in the same interface. All right. So let's take a look at what happens here. I'm just going to close it up and reopen it. Consoleasy has 3 different modules, and module number 1 is by far the most popular, is the consoles module. So essentially, when I do a Control-O, I get to select multiple servers next to each other, and we get the live consoles from 3 different servers in my case. There is no limit to how many servers you can deal with. And you can see that automatically we have some color schemes here that identify higher severity events. And the other thing that I'm so madly in love with is that, when you go to your admin client and you hit live, you only start seeing what's going on as of that very moment. In Consoleasy, under options, you have your preferences, and you can actually set a specific time interval to look back on and automatically load everything that happened within that time frame. So what does this mean? When I open a new console, I'm automatically looking at my log file and loading up everything that happened in the past 150 minutes, which really gives me some context, right? So this is something pretty cool. The other thing that's really cool is that you can actually open multiple consoles to the same servers as well. Now, you might actually think that that doesn't make sense at all, but let me actually show you why. So I will select the same 3 servers and open the secondary server consoles to all of them. And you see that I now have a console on the top for Acme 01 and one on the bottom that shows me the exact same info. Now, I think that one of the biggest added values of Consoleasy is that we give you the power to define what you want to see in your server consoles. Because the thing is that in reality, most of those server consoles in a production environment are going to be so busy that there's no way you actually see something that they're trying to tell you, as in your servers. So what we can do is we can actually use filter options on these servers and say, for example, that we don't want to see lower priorities, only the problematic stuff. I hit OK, and you can see how my bottom console turned into an alive to-do list, because this is still an alive console. It just only shows me problematic things. We can actually deploy those filters across multiple consoles. So I can see that every second console should only show me the priorities, and every upper console should still keep showing me everything that goes on there. So as you can see, my bottom screens, my bottom consoles just transformed, and they're now just listening to the problematic things. We can turn this around and actually say that we want to use a regex, right, to define what we want to see. So for example, I could create a regular expression to only listen to what the agent manager has to say. And you can see that now I have 3 specific consoles that are only showing me the agent manager communication. Now, of course, it's not just about listening to what your servers are doing. It's also about communicating with your servers. So I can at any point put in console commands directly. This is provided that I have console rights. In fact, I can talk to multiple servers. I can send commands to multiple servers. For example, the tell agent manager sketch, and this comes up in those screens as well. So we can send console commands, and in fact, we actually remember any console commands you've ever used in the past, which to me is a huge help, because in a lot of cases, it will just help me complete the same console command I once Googled. So this can really save a lot of time. Now, another thing is that we also give you access to your server tasks. And I actually forgot to say something, which is that Consoleasy and the basic functionality here, just looking at your server consoles, does not require you to have console rights, which is a huge added value. So in order to send console commands, you always need to be authorized to do so. But in order to actually just see what happens in your server consoles, this is awesome. This is why a lot of our customers have deployed Consoleasy to their help desk personnel, right? Because you don't want to give them console rights, but you do want them to be able to see and filter out what's going on the servers, because that way they can save a lot of time for the administrators. Same way, gathering the server tasks, which comes up in a dynamic window. We refresh this window every 3 seconds. This also works using an API call and not using the show task command. So it means that anybody without even the access to the server console will be able to monitor what those server tasks are doing. We also give you access to your statistics. And those are pretty cool. Most of the admins that I know don't really use them because of the way that they're managed in the admin client. And there's so many of them, right? So here we actually give you the possibility to select a subset of statistics that you might be interested in. And those are the ones that we're going to show you. For example, agent-related statistics, where you can see that today alone, I had 6 agents that were denied access to run on the server. And of course, this is an issue. I could use Agent Easy to debug and find out which were those agents. So this is pretty cool stuff. All right, so that's only module number 1 in Console Easy. Module number 2 is the log analyzers module, where essentially we give you the ability to scan your log files across as many servers as you want. Now, I probably don't have to introduce why searching your log file is really painful, working with the log.nsf. So here I can select multiple servers and then really quickly set up, for example, let's say, show me everything that went wrong in the past 3 days, show me everything that contained the error string. And we're basically going through 3 different servers, a total of 9 days worth of logs. And while it can take a little bit of time, it's generally super fast, except if you're using a VM and you have 10 Ytria tools open. But in any case, the results that are going to come back are way more easy to work with than what you get with the Notes client and log.nsf, right? So we're going to provide those results in our FlexiGrid. You're going to be able to really easily analyze them and even report them. There was actually an interesting story with a customer that I went to visit on site. They told me they had a feeling that they're getting attacked and brute forced all the time. So we opened up Console Easy, and we were actually witnessing the SMTP brute force attempts real time on those server consoles. So what we did is we actually set some debugging parameters for some of these protocols that were getting exploited. And so afterwards, when we went into the log analyzer, we managed to zero in on all of the attack attempts in the past 1 month. And we managed to find out which were the most targeted users directly from this interface. So here is, by the way, everything that went wrong on my 3 servers. We can group them together by description. I think I just hid column here, but with the grid manager, I can just put it back in there. So I can group. Okay, all right. My demo gods don't really like me. So anyway, I look at my servers, and these are kind of the same messages that occurred within the last 3 days. It really gives you a very good idea of the posture of your Domino servers. You'll see that these are the agents that are having issues with the access rights in the server. There are some agents which is nasty that are showing object variable not set errors, stuff like that. This is not things that you generally look at proactively because we have enough to do usually, but still seeing everything that goes wrong on those servers is pretty awesome. So that's our log analyzer. All right. So I don't see any questions. We still have half an hour to go and a couple of tools to discuss. So let's actually proceed with Replication Easy. So Replication Easy is a multi-server tool just like Console Easy, but we kind of refer to it as a Swiss Army knife for replication issues. So essentially what we try to do here is we try to answer any and all sorts of questions that you may have about replication. First things first, we allow you to select all of your servers, hit OK, and then the first question that we try and answer is what is replicated and where on my servers, right? I don't know what replicas I have across multiple servers. Maybe there are some databases that are not replicated as they're supposed to. So the first thing here is selecting all the servers. We will load up their contents. And as you can see, this is extremely fast. We create 1 column per server, and then we fill in the gaps. We actually show you what are the databases on those servers. We will show you the replica ID of those databases. In this case, you see that there's only replicas in Acmeo 1 and 2, but not in Acmeo 3. And then we've got the number of replicas loaded up here as well. So when I do a grouping with that information, we basically get a snapshot of our replication landscape across all of our servers. So I can see, for example, there's 106 DBs that are replicated all over. There's 32 of them that only have 2 replicas on the 3 servers. There is 111 databases that are not replicated at all. And one of the categories that we show here is the duplicate replicas, which is not usually a good thing to have. So let's take a look at that quickly and categorize them further by their replica ID. What this means is that we have found the same database with the same replica ID twice on the same server, ACME01. You actually see that we have a column for do not replicate. So you see that both of these replicas are disabled for replication, which is actually good. But as I go down here, there is here a template file that is not disabled for replication. However, it's present on the same server twice. Should this database replicate with some other server, it would only be the one, actually the first one, that would replicate, because the second one would not properly get replicated. So this can be a major issue. Being able to see all of your duplicate replicas in one place is something really valuable. Now, once we have that landscape, right? Once we identified what has replicated and where, the next thing that we do is we give you a bunch of diagnostic tools. So one of the first and most important questions about replication is we set it up and we kind of expect it to work as designed, right? But how can we be sure that replication works as it's supposed to? Well, I can select, let me just get rid of the replica ID here. I can select a category like the category of all databases that are replicated everywhere. And I can select a bunch of DBs here. I could select my purchasing database, for example, and say, I want to compare the contents of these databases. So I'm going to use the load node counters feature, which essentially allows me to compare the number of documents, even designs or classes of designs, including deletion stubs, across this database and all of its replicas. You can guess that whenever you see the red color, it always means something's wrong, and you would be correct. So you can see that apart from the number of deletion stubs, everything else is really not correct. So we can see that there is document discrepancies between ACME01 and 2 and 3. There are design discrepancies. So this doesn't really look good, right? And the question is, why would this happen, right? Why would this occur? What is the reason that we're not replicating properly? So the next question I would ask myself is, when did we replicate the last time? And so that's a question you would usually answer by pulling up the replication history, which only works database by database, right? So this is something that's unique to databases. Here, not only do we let you look at it all together for multiple replicas, but we also allow you to build a chart based on this info. And you can see that the chart will be a visual representation of how replication happened. And you can see that replication has not occurred since over, well, actually in ACME01 and 2's case, it didn't occur since 6 years, and then the rest of it was over a month ago as well. Does that potentially explain why we're facing discrepancies? Of course it does. So what is the reason for this? Well, how do we solve it? Well, I would probably right-click the database and clear the replication history for all 3. And then the other thing we see here right away is that the do not replicate flag is enabled, right? Now, when this column is checked, it also means that at least one of those databases are disabled for replication. So I have a little bit of a yellow background here. I'm not sure if that's coming over on Zoom, but when you do this on your own computer, you will see it much better. We can see that the replica that's actually disabled for replication is the one on ACME01. So I can go to my selected databases panel down here, and you see the same yellow background here. You can see that this is the one that's disabled for application, and you can quickly edit the replica related properties and take the flag out of the temporary disabled replication. Yeah, so that's how you can edit some of the replication properties really, really quickly. All right. So another thing about integrity, right? Replication integrity and consistency is that we do this with one database and all of its replicas, which is really cool. But what if I wanted to run more of an automated health check of my replication posture? Well, in that case, I could select everything here, every database and all of their replicas, and I could simply use the same node counters feature. In the interest of time, I'm just going to focus on the actual documents in this case. I'm going to hit OK. So we're going through a selected 106 databases across 3 servers, which pretty much means we just compared 318 databases and have the node counters results down here. As you can see, there's a bunch of red colors. So in order to better understand this, we can make this window a bit bigger. Excuse me. We actually have a column here, the inconsistency found column. And so categorizing by that will show me that out of 106 databases that we checked, 12 of them are out of sync in terms of the number of documents. Now we can see the difference here. And for some of them, there are hundreds of documents missing. And of course, we're looking at names.nsf here, which is not good, right? There's like 700 documents missing from the version of MacMeal 1. And at any point, we can export this info. We can go deeper. So we can say, for example, for the service desk database, where I'm missing a bunch of documents here, I've got the most documents in MacMeal 2. I could actually go deeper, right? Now let's actually do that exercise real quick, where as an admin, if this is what I see, right? If what I'm seeing is that the most documents are in MacMeal 2, and then there's some less documents here on the other replicas, and I try to replicate after deleting the replication history, and it still doesn't work, what I would probably do without Replication Easy and the Ytria tools is I would probably delete the replicas from MacMeal 1 and the one from MacMeal 3, because it looks like that's the lowest risk of losing documents, right? So let's actually prove that theory wrong. And let's pass these onto the main grid. So we selected the database in the main grid. From here, I can pass them onto Replication, ScanEasy's replication auditor. ScanEasy is a tool that we'll discuss in a few minutes, but it is basically our document management tool. It's also what we refer to as our flagship tool, because most of our users have that. This tool comes with over 100 different document management features. One of those is the ability to compare replicas side by side. So I'm going to hit OK and compare MacMeal 1 with MacMeal 2. And basically what happens here is that instead of just focusing on the document counts and stuff like that, we'll focus on everything and actually give you the real differences between 2 replicas. You can see on the right-hand side, I'm looking at replica, the replica in MacMeal 2, and on the left-hand side, I show you everything that is in the replica on MacMeal 1. And in the middle, we show you the result of our calculation. So when I categorize this by the results, we can see that there's 2 deletion stubs that are supposed to replicate over. We don't care about this because it doesn't actually affect any documents. There's 1 document that is missing from the version on MacMeal 2, and there's 8 deletion stubs that are supposed to replicate over to MacMeal 2. So if I go back to Replication Easy, and we actually add up the numbers, there is 8 documents that should be deleted from MacMeal 2. So MacMeal 2 should be at 44 documents, but there is 1 that should go over as well. So 1 document should be created, 8 documents should be deleted, which makes for a 7 document difference. And if I go back, that's precisely what we're seeing, because 45 plus 7 is 52. And it does look like the right version of this DB is actually the one on MacMeal 1, right? So that's just to kind of find out what the differences are. And there's a lot more stuff that we can do here, because not only can we clear the database replication history and then try to re-replicate. Actually, we can do that directly from here. So I can do console commands, replicate from MacMeal 1 to MacMeal 2 and 3. But we have a lot more diagnostic options too. We can actually compare the ACLs of those databases, right? Because there's a chance that the ACL is incorrect, which can pretty much mess with the replication. In this case, ACLs are okay. We can actually look at replication formulas, which are really tricky to look at otherwise, because they don't really even show for one database altogether. So if I look at it by receiver, you'll see that, for example, MacMeal 3 has some of those replication formulas in place, which will only take over documents from 2 specific views, right? So that could actually mess with my replication. That could result in a lot less documents being taken over. So I can decide whether I want to delete this or if I just close the case as works as designed. Beside this, we can also compare agents. We can look at conflicts across multiple databases. We can create new replicas directly from here. We have the node tracker feature, which is pretty awesome because we can track documents or designs based on their unique IDs across multiple databases and figure out how did replication happen, right? Where did these documents come from? How long did they take to go from one replica node to another? So this is pretty cool stuff as well. And there's one more thing that's very important about Replication Easy, which is that we kind of went from a direction of, we came from a direction of looking at everything that we have on the servers and then zeroing in on the problematic stuff. However, in reality, it usually works in a way that you get one database that has a replication issue, and then you go from there. So instead of having to look at your probably huge environment just so that you can narrow it down to one database, you can do something different. You can actually open a database or just simply select it on your workspace, open Replication Easy on it, which will take over the selected database and only that database. And then you have a feature here that allows you to discover the replicas of that database, which works through replication history entries. So we're going to basically look at the list of replication history entries. We're going to use them as pointers to actually find every alive replica of this database, and we'll do that automatically. So right now we're going and discovering every replica. We'll show you the Discover Replicas chart in the end, which can be really interesting. Not in my case, but it's very interesting in most cases. You'll see the green thing actually means that those replicas are alive. So you can see that if you remember, names.nsf had a major issue because I was missing like 700 documents. Now I looked at the replication history and you can see that replication seems to work correctly. So there's probably something stuck between the replication history entries for which the solution will be to clear them. But in any case, we managed to find all of the alive replicas of a given database, and we did so with just one click. So from now on, I can work with the node counters, conflict counters, manage the ACLs, and much more than that. So that is Replication Easy in a nutshell. This is a tool we could talk about for 2 hours just by itself, by the way. So this really was just a quick overview. Any questions? I don't actually see any questions. So again, I'm hoping everybody is still awake. Yep, but if there's no questions, then we'll just start to wrap it up, but take a quick look at ScanEasy as well. A fair warning, dealing with ScanEasy and actually talking about ScanEasy in 15 minutes or actually less than that is definitely impossible. So ScanEasy is the one that we talk about for about half a day when we go on site to customers, because it is the most robust product that we have. And it's definitely something that I personally use 20 to 30 times every single day. Let's still take a quick look at what we do here. So ScanEasy is, like I said, a document management product. I would actually love to do a survey, but I forgot to set that up before. It would be great to know where you guys are with ScanEasy, or if you're aware, or if you're a user of ScanEasy. Anyway, ScanEasy is a document management tool. Most of our users, I believe, use it to maximum 5% of its capabilities. So that's why I think it's always interesting to cover a little bit. The basic functionality is that you open ScanEasy on a document, and then we give you a larger property box within ScanEasy where you see everything that is inside the document. Every single item value. You can categorize those items by any of their information, such as the type. You can better understand those items by a lot of different properties. We even show you the sequence number of those items. You can see the modification dates, whether there's a summary flag, as well as you can quickly find out what are the largest items on your backend documents. But the best thing here when working with a single document is that we let you get the most out of Domino as a non-relational database system, in the sense that you can really harness all the powers using ScanEasy on an individual document. What do I mean? Well, usually in a relational database system, you cannot modify a single record without modifying the table, right? Well, that's not the case in notes. So I can simply right-click any field and say, well, actually, I can right-click the document and say, I want to create a new item. Yeah. And I just put in the item name. I can define the type, put in whatever value I want, and I simply apply. And then I, of course, have to save my changes, which is a Control S, but we just added a brand new item on this document backend. Anything that I want to modify can be modified by simply navigating to the field value, putting in our changes, and then saving it up, all without doing any coding whatsoever. There is a question here. Can we use ScanEasy to edit fields in user mail file profile documents? Absolutely. We're going to take a look at this in a second. So we can create new items, we can modify item values, and we can also delete items directly from document backend. So we have absolutely full flexibility over individual documents, which is a really, really big plus. Now, the biggest added value of ScanEasy, however, is the way that we work with groups of documents. And as a teaser or spoiler, you have the exact same powers for multiple documents as well. So the two biggest added values of this product is wherever you usually create special views, right? If you create special views to manage groups of documents or to look at their certain item values and stuff like that, you never have to do that again. ScanEasy will let you manage all this in memory and even create exports if you wanted to. And the next thing is that wherever you usually use an agent that you write once and then you never run it again for specific document issues, for example, if you're looking for duplicates in a mail file, right? You can write a script for that to identify those documents, but you're probably never going to use it again. So instead of that, with ScanEasy, you can deal with it without any programming. So instead of having to spend time on creating special views as well as special agents, ScanEasy will be there for you and take care of this in just a few clicks. So anyway, before looking at the multiple documents section, I did want to quickly go through what we can do with things that are in your database. So essentially, we show you and let you manage everything that's in your notes database. On the database level, one of the most popular features is that you can quickly create new replica IDs. You have then the access control list section, which is an embedded version of ACL Easy, but just for this one database. So again, you can quickly look at group memberships and stuff like that. I actually prefer using ScanEasy to edit ACLs because at least it doesn't freeze up my notes client, right? Then we have the design section, which is a bit more sophisticated. There's a lot of powerful stuff you can do, but it's important to understand that we don't want to undermine the designer client. So what we show you is what's physically inside a view design note, all right? So this is not to replace the designer client. Then we have the document section. We'll talk about it in a second. And coming back to the question, yes, it is possible to manage any and all sorts of profile documents. So we list every single profile document. And in fact, we'll let you deal with them just like as if they were standard documents. What does that mean? You select the profile, we show you what is inside the profile, and you can quickly create new fields, such as a field for lookup server identification. I'll say, let's make it a names field so that I can pick my server from the NAB. From the NAB dialog. So there is my server. I'll hit OK, and there's my new field that I just created directly in the profile document. Now, what's even better than deleting profiles, because I think I know where the question is coming from. There's a bunch of stuff. There's a bunch of stuff that you might have issues with in user mail files, and unfortunately, the common answer that you see online is just delete the profile document, right? You can actually delete profiles directly from here using the delete button, but I would strongly advise against that because there's usually a reason that those issues happen. For example, a common thing that occurs is that you have a bunch of mail rules that are still working, right? Even though the mail rule document itself was removed. This is something that is thanks to, well, it's actually because of the calendar profile. And yes, deleting the calendar profile is a solution, but it's kind of shooting a bird with a nuclear bomb, right? Because it's going to wipe out everything else. It's going to wipe out all the other settings. While what would also be enough is just to look at the inside of that calendar profile and find the mail rule field that is still active, even though the mail rule is not there. We actually have a blog post about this on our techlab.ytria.com, how to actually do that. So yes, You can edit any mail file related and pretty much any profile documents. You can even create new profiles directly in the backend, and you can delete profiles just directly from the right-click menu as well. Another thing we do is we give you access to your deletion stubs. So you can finally visualize your deletion stubs using ScanEasy. We give you a little tool that we call the Deletion Stub Explorer, where you can put in 2 dates and times and say, show me everything that was deleted between these 2 dates. When I hit search, we'll give you everything that was deleted, and you can copy their unique IDs. And if you have an actual restore version of mail file, in some cases, you can actually copy the list of unique IDs and then use one of the many search features in ScanEasy, the search by unique ID feature, which, as opposed to the admin client that only allows us to search for 1 unique ID at a time, will allow you to look for a list of up to 1,000 unique IDs and find those documents. Then you can restore them to the production version. Then we also manage conflicts. So if you have any conflict documents, we'll show them here on the left. In fact, we have a conflict solver tool in the tools menu where we show you a list of all of your conflicts up here. And there's just the one. We let you compare the conflict with its parent. In fact, we can decide to only show the different values. I'm going to select whichever values I want to keep from the conflict and the parent. And so the good thing here is that instead of the binary choice that you normally have, which is I either keep the conflict or the parent, here you can make an educated decision based on the actual data that is different. And you can then hit solve, where we merge those documents according to what you selected. So I hit OK, and then we merge the documents, and then we remove the conflict. So we just solve the conflict. And so let's actually take a look at the document section here. What you will notice when you expand the document section is that we do a standard categorization of documents based on what form they're using. This is amazing because there's no interface in a notes database where you just see everything that the database contains. Here, we give you all of the documents inside the database along with what form they're using, right? Now, let me go with an example here. I have an issue in this directory database because I know for a fact that I imported all the phone numbers to everybody using LotusScript, but they still won't show up in the view, right? So I probably made a mistake somewhere, but the phone numbers are still there. So let's try to solve that problem with ScanEasy. Well, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up an example document. So we're pulling it up in ScanEasy, and I want to find the phone number. So I'm going to quickly sort by the value and find something that looks like a phone number. There it is. So it's actually in a field called Office Phone NR. Now, if I quickly sort by the actual field name, you'll see that there is an Office Phone number field, but it's actually empty. So it looks like I basically provided the wrong field name when I imported those phone numbers. So how do I solve this issue? Well, in this document section, like I said, we have the same powers we had over individual documents, but with multiple documents. So let's go to look at and work with our person documents. Let's do a diff on them. The diff feature basically gives me a data table of everything that those documents contain. It will show me a list of fields, a list of items that are in at least one of those documents. For example, we'll see our test field that we just created, right? Or what was it? Test item, correct? This is something I just created, and you can see that we give you a status about it too. We tell you that it does not exist in every document. Now, what I want to find here is the Office Phone MR. You can see that this field exists everywhere and has different values across my documents. So while the Office Phone number, which is the official field, exists everywhere and has no value across my person documents, this field with the wrong name holds the right phone number. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply right-click this item and say, I want to delete this item from all the 1,552 person documents. I'll hit OK because the item doesn't hold any value, so I don't really care what happens with it. So we're removing the wrong item name that doesn't have any value. And then once we're done with this, we're going to want to take the item that actually holds those phone numbers, and we're going to say, let's rename this. And we're going to call it Office Phone Number. We're basically just renaming the item and keeping the value so that once we're done, we should be able to go back to notes and see what are our changes, what changed. Well, we modified all these documents. I will do an F9, and then we basically see that it's thinking, which is good news, and those are my phone numbers. So we just did some analysis in a bunch of documents without creating any views, without having to go through the ugly property box, and then we made some modifications without any agents. That's kind of the biggest added value of ScanEasy. Of course, we can't really go into more details here, but if I wanted to create a nice report of these people and some of their properties, instead of or without creating a view, I simply select the items that I'm interested in, and then I click values. And then we're basically reading out those item values and putting them into the Flexi grid. All of this is in memory, so none of it required an actual view. We can actually export all of this information with a Control-C, Control-V, as well as we can pretty much work with all of those items. I could select a bunch of items and say I want to delete them. I could create a new item across all of my person documents and set its value using a formula. We can perform search and replaces across documents and multiple items, modify individual item values, and more. So that's kind of the core value of ScanEasy. I'm always amazed in how little I can cover in an hour and a half. As you guys can see, there's really a lot to talk about. Now I do want to, before we wrap things up, I do want to show you a little bit of where you can go. There is a bunch of resources on our website. So you have the Learning Center, where we have a lot of information about the tools. You can actually go to look at our webinars. So under Learning Resources, you can go and look at the Tech Lab, which is our blog, where you see most of those interesting scenarios that you might ever need, and the step-by-step instructions on how to do them. We have the ytria.com/webcasts, which is where you see the recorded webinars, including ones about ScanEasy and every single individual product that we've done. And these are available to see for free and to stream for free. All right. There is a question here, but I'm not sure that I understand. We'll get back to you. Thank you so much, guys, for taking the time out. I hope that you found this valuable. If you have any questions, you know where to find us. We're always happy to help. And yep, have a great rest of your days.